The idea of culture is to meet people where they are, help them grow, and understand that you don't experience life from the same perspective that they do. No matter what happens to you in life, there can be some really awful things that happen. And some days that putting one foot in front of the other were very baby steps. But I still kept going forward because I knew that going forward was going to keep me successful in whatever it is that I wanted to do and ultimately help me to achieve my dream. I actually think that communication is the foundation for being a good leader. If you're not a good communicator, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a good leader. Hey everyone, have you ever wondered anything about me? You've heard me interview quite a few women entrepreneurs on this podcast before, and at least one man, but you don't know much about Dana Weaver and the person behind the podcast. So today I am thrilled to have Dani with me, and she is going to introduce me, but she's also going to tell you a little bit about who she is and what she does. And I think you are just going to totally enjoy her interview style and getting to know her and her wonderful personality, because I just enjoy being in the room with her every time I talk to her. So Dani, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dani Bolden. I'm the CEO of Accountability Hub, LLC. Accountability Hub, LLC is a ways for solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, guiding them through the twists and turns of the entrepreneurial journey. So, Dana, enough about me. Let's put you in the hot seat.
I'm a little bit nervous, I'm going to be honest.
Question number one.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what motivated you to transition from a long career in healthcare to leadership coaching for women entrepreneurs?
I sure can. Thank you for asking the question. So my entire background, if you've watched any of my videos before, has been in the aging field. And I have worked with nursing homes and retirement communities and hospice and home health and all the different types of services for older people in my career, because that was my passion. And I loved, and I still do, I love working with older people. And I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to start my own business. And what I thought I was going to do is serve the people in that field and continue the work that I had done around leadership and strategy and facilitation, different things like that, and realized that I had women entrepreneurs just calling me up and kind of popping up out of the blue, if you will, saying, Dana, what is it that you're doing? And I'd like to learn more. And then as we started to talk about leadership and strategy, I realized that there's not a lot of training in this space around what it means to be a leader and how to communicate with your employees, but also how to communicate with your customers, how to communicate with people who might be funders for you, like venture capitalists, different things like that. And there's just not a lot of real targeted training for women like that. And so I just transitioned my business and things started to happen and things started to grow. And I knew that I was in the right space.
It's always great when we have that confirmation after we make such a large, life choice.
Yes.
Now you've talked about effective communication. Can you tell us why you think it's vital for women leaders and how our listeners can improve their communication skills?
Sure. Well, I actually think that communication is the foundation for being a good leader. If you're not a good communicator, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a good leader. And communication, at the essence of it, is making sure that the other person, whoever is on the other end that you're communicating with, understands what you're trying to say. And sometimes it's as simple as asking a really good question and just sitting there and listening to them. That's one of my tips that I share a lot. So a lot of people are in the business of asking questions and then thinking up the next question that they want to ask while the person's answering the question, or waiting their turn to speak and they're not paying a bit of attention to what the person is saying. And if you think about how that makes you feel if you've had a conversation recently where someone is chatting with you and they're not listening to anything you say, it doesn't make you feel very good. And it makes you feel dismissed and it makes you feel less than. And there's a number of things that it makes you feel. And then if you think about what it would feel like if someone actually listened to you and understood what you were saying, that is so important. And that's something that doesn't happen a lot right now. We're so focused on what we're going to say that we don't focus on how we're going to listen and how we're going to um, engage with the person that we're talking to. And another thing in communication is making sure that under you are communicating to the person, but then asking them what they heard you say, because what you think you say isn't always what people hear. And people hear through their own lens, their own experiences. They don't always, well, they definitely don't understand the intent that you're using when you're talking to them if you aren't explaining it to them or they haven't had a lot of time to get to know you. But we do all listen through our own lens and our own experience. And so we take out of a conversation things that are important to us, but maybe not as important as what the person speaking wants you to hear. So a good thing to do is ask the question, did you understand what I was saying? Or what were the most important pieces that you heard there? And then when you learn what they heard, then you can come to an agreement or just help them understand where it is you were coming from and what you wanted to say.
Definitely, men aren't the only ones that are from Mars when we're having conversations, right? Leads us into a great question. You faced significant setbacks in your life and career. How did those experiences shape your approach to leadership? And what can your audience learn from them?
That's I've had some setbacks in my life that, people have. It's not anything that people have some people haven't experienced. One of my biggest setbacks was I was never able to have children, and it was one of the major desires of my heart. I remember, growing up, always wanted to get married and have kids. And I got to get married to someone I love a ton. And we are best friends and we get along. And that part was fantastic. But then we couldn't have kids together. And that was a rough experience for us. We tried for, I think, 10 years. And what I did in that situation was I put one foot in front of the other and I tried to find out solutions. And I didn't stop and let things hold me back. That was the idea of putting one foot in front of the other because I knew that if I let it get me down or let it get me depressed, it would stall me and I wouldn't be moving forward. And that is part of my personality. Moving forward is always something that I like to do. I like to achieve things. I like to accomplish things. I like to, um, I just like to figure things out because I feel like everything is figure outable. And so, ultimately, what happened was we were never able to have our own biological kids, but we realized we have a lot of love and we have a home and we can give love to children who really need it in their time of need. And so we became foster parents. And now we have two foster daughters that we absolutely love and adore and hope to adopt someday. And so I get to be a mom, I get to be a parent. And maybe it didn't happen through, biological means, but they were sure born out of my heart. And then another big setback that I had was I had worked in the field of aging for 20 years and I was in line, if you will, to become the president and CEO of the small nonprofit that I worked for 20 years. And I had been groomed kind of and trained and what kind of set up on a pedestal that I would get that job as soon as the current president retired. And when she announced her retirement, what ended up happening is I applied for the job and so did someone else who got the job. Incredibly smart, have a lot of respect for that person. But when it all came down to it, that person is the one that got the job. And I was pretty crushed at the moment, even though I kind of thought I knew that might be happening along the way. It's still kind of hurt. And that's okay though, because what I do is I put one foot in front of the other. And then a week later, the person that got the job said, in my vision, under my vision of this company, um, we don't have a C-suite, and I was in the C-suite. And so basically, very, you know, basically I was told I wasn't needed. My services were no longer needed there anymore. And so I had a decision to make. First of all, I had been at this place for 20 years. I had friends. They were like family to me, all the people that we served. And I had taught leadership with them. And I had a vast experience of like workforce development in that space. And I realized I have to put one foot in front of the other again and figure out what I'm going to do next. And I kind of half-heartedly applied for a couple of other jobs, but I realized I don't want, I didn't want to try to prove to someone else that I was worthy of having a job. I didn't feel like I needed to prove to someone else that I was worthy of having a job. I was successful in my position before for 20 years, and I didn't leave it because I did anything wrong. And I just decided I'm not going to go through this. I'm not going to try to prove to a bunch of people who don't know me that I'm worthy. I'm worthy without having to prove to them. And it's really their loss for not hiring me, is the way I look at it. And so I just decided I have this vast knowledge. I have this experience with a lot of great results helping people grow. And I'm just going to start my own business. And so initially I thought, I'll go ahead and start. I'll go ahead and start in the field that I know about. And I did. And I made a bit of an impact there. I wasn't in it for long enough to make a huge impact, but I did it for about a year. And then I realized I'm trying to convince people to work with me in this space where in this other space, there's people asking me if I would work with them. And I thought it's a no brainer, right? So that's why I transitioned over there. But major the major thing that I just want to share with everyone is no matter what happens to you in life, there can be some really awful things that happen. And I didn't name everything, but those two were really significant in my life. And what I did was I put one foot in front of the other and I did not let it hold me back. And some days that putting one foot in front of the other were very baby steps, but I still kept going forward because I knew that going forward was going to keep me alive and it was going to keep me successful in whatever it is that I wanted to do and ultimately help me to achieve my dream. But staying stagnant or taking steps back, I just couldn't imagine being in that space. So that's my tip for everyone that's listening. When things hold you back, or when bad things happen to us, rough things happen to us, don't let it hold you back. Take one step forward, even if it's a tiny step. Just know you're making progress and you'll eventually come out of that and you'll come out of it victoriously.
I definitely agree with you. It sounds like you took that, what could have been an imposter syndrome moment, and turned it on its head. So, in talking about imposter syndrome, many women struggle with imposter syndrome. What practical advice do you have for those looking to overcome these feelings and step into that power?
Yeah. Well, I think the first really important thing is to acknowledge that you have imposter syndrome. And not everybody's able to do that, nor do they recognize. Not everybody always recognizes that it's imposter syndrome. Sometimes we think of it as feeling like a fraud, or we have these little voices in our head that tells us that we're not good enough, or we're not going to be able to achieve whatever it is that we want to do. And that's voices that happen because of past experiences and past situations that are just kind of rearing their ugly little head, and they want to hold you back. But and I guess is another way of saying that, um, what you do is you acknowledge them and then you kind of lean into them and figure out, well, why is that voice saying that to me? And when I'm talking about voices in our head, I'm not talking about, you hearing voices and, all of that. I'm just really I'm talking about that inner voice that we have that doesn't always give us positive feedback or helps us to move forward positively. It looks at all the negative things. I think our brain is wired, especially in today's society, to kind of go negative and go back. And so when you can start thinking about the positive and identifying, okay, what is it that's holding me back? And do it in a non-judgmental fashion. What is it that's making me feel like I'm not enough? So for example, the experience that I had losing my job, that was, I started to hear voices like I wasn't good enough. I just I couldn't be the person that needed to be in that position. I couldn't do all of these things. And when I was applying for the other jobs and trying to convince them, or I felt in my mind, I was trying to convince them that I was worthy. My mind was like, well, you lost that job. How are you going to be able to get this job? The little voices that go in your head. And we are so much harder on our own selves than other people are on us. And so I started to lean into that and just flip that script. Like, well, I actually am worthy. And if I have to spend a lot of time convincing this person that I'm worthy, then maybe I don't want to work with them. Maybe that's not the right fit for me. And it's all about identifying what's holding you back and then flipping that script is really kind of my approach to imposter syndrome. And a couple of my clients and I have been talking lately about imposter syndrome and how it holds them back. And it is painful when you confront some of those things because it could be that the reason that certain things hold you back were experiences that you had as a child or um, experiences that you had early in your career that made you feel like that you weren't enough. And somebody reinforced that with you and then you carried it forward. But that's probably not true today. So what I usually ask women is whatever that inner voice is saying in your head or in just within your soul that's negative, ask yourself, well, is it true? So am I worthy? Absolutely. So why am I listening to that voice in my head that says I'm not worthy? I'm worthy and you're worthy and everybody listening is worthy. None of us are unworthy, but it's hard for us to truly appreciate and embrace that sometimes. So that's one way that I do it. Another thing I do is ask myself, is it true? Because sometimes the voices in our head, it say things like, um, I didn't treat my body well enough. I wasn't healthy enough to have kids. Well, was that true? No, that wasn't true because I went through a lot of times where, I was extremely healthy and it didn't move the needle. It didn't make a difference. Um, and so you got to really look at that. And then I ask myself finally, the third question are these thoughts going to get me where I want to go? And it's a resounding no every time. So I just take those things and I start to realize when imposter syndrome starts to creep up for me, I can ask myself those questions and lean into why I feel that way. And a lot of times I can come out on the other side realizing that it's okay and I can do these things. And again, put that one foot in front of the other.
I agree with you there. You gave us 3 really great tips. I hope everyone taught those. Um, let's talk about a client success story from your coaching work, maybe that exemplifies the power of leadership and effective communication.
Well, it's a client that I have now, but at the time I wasn't working with this client at the time as this, but we were friends and we were connecting. And just being in the space with each other, we were talking about our business and we were talking about just rising and scaling and getting customers. And we were in the early parts of our business where things weren't moving quickly for us. As entrepreneurs, you don't go from 0 to, a million right away. And if you do, I'm here to tell you that you're missing so many steps along the way that after that, great experience that you have initially wears off, you didn't learn those steps along the way. And so sometimes we have to go back down. So shooting for the stars doesn't always work for everyone. It does work for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And so we were just talking about how do we get clients? How do we give them benefit? We have these things that we know and we can provide. How do we make that sale? And we were part of a coaching program that helped us, think through some of those things. So that's why we were connected. And just through conversation, we both realized that just having those conversations helped us to rise. And then she started to tell me how inspiring I was to her. And I was an accountability partner that helped her to think bigger about her business and think differently. And through this conversation that we had for several months, she went from 0 clients in this new space. She had clients from another space she was in, but 0 clients in this new space to actually having 3 or 4 clients after having a masterclass and bringing people into something that she thought up on her own. And it was because I kept pushing her and asking her questions and helping her think about what is it that she really wanted and what would business look like if it was perfect for her? What does her dream business look like? And then I always say, once you figure out what that is, you kind of step back. And so she held our masterclass that she hadn't held for like 9 months or something like that. She held our masterclass. She got people into her program and they are thrilled. They are so happy that they're singing her praises to other people and more people are coming in. And so sometimes it's just a matter of looking at things from a different perspective and giving that encouraging, ongoing acknowledgement and support and inspiration, but then also bringing back to them what it is their heart's desire is. Why did they start this business? Who is it that they're trying to help? Because at the end of the day, if we're not helping people, we don't have a business.
That is true. It has to be what I like to call a win-win for everyone involved. That's the coach and the client. Kind of reminds me of team culture. And so, in that frame of mind, can you emphasize the importance of team culture or business culture? And what are some actionable steps that the listeners can take to create a thriving ecosystem for themselves?
Yes. I look at it from the perspective of we're kind of starting out in the entrepreneurial journey. So if you have a ton of employees, it will relate to you, but I'm kind of starting from the beginning here. So you're a solopreneur, for example, and you are doing everything and you're overwhelmed and there's so many things that you're trying to do within your business. And as a woman, you also have a lot of other activities and expectations and just a lot of press from the outside to be this perfect person. You think that everybody expects you to be perfect. That's where imposter syndrome kind of rolls into that. And you compare yourself with other moms, other women, other business owners, all of the things. And so you're this solopreneur and you're really overwhelmed. And you may or may not realize that actually bringing a virtual assistant on or someone to help you in your business is actually going to help you grow. So this also goes back to the piece of communication that we talked about earlier. When you bring someone in to work with you, you have to be clear in your communication. And right now, it's really, at least the people that I am connected with and work with, it's very, very popular to work with virtual assistants that don't live in America. So we live in America. And, there's a language barrier there sometimes. And cultures are different. No, my culture is not their culture and, vice versa. And so there's some barriers that we have to overcome so that we can work well together. And that really comes down to communication and making sure that the person understands what it is that you want. And also, first, really, you have to understand what you want. You have to know what your vision is and your values. And that's what you have to bring to the communication and to the virtual assistant so that you're communicating well, and they know where you're going and where your business is going. And what does growth look like? What are the targets or the key performance indicators that you want to hit? If they don't understand that and you're just giving them tasks to do, they're not going to help you scale and help you move up. So once you have mastered that person, working with that person, you guys are working really well and you found the right person and you may want to add, other people into your business. You want to make sure that you're onboarding them just like you did your virtual assistant and let them know that one, they're important to your business and they're helping you achieve this goal, this desire that you have to serve people, and they're helping you with it. And they're an important part of that, incredibly important part of that. And the biggest thing about creating a culture where people want to work and where you're achieving all of the goals that you have set for yourself is treating people like humans and taking a step back and realizing that just because your experience is one thing, what you've experienced, that's fine, but their experience is completely different. So you want to meet them where they are and you want to ask questions and get to know them and understand what their motivation is. Why do they even want to work with you? And you want to help them grow and help them to achieve things that they're really proud of. And maybe it's even helping them launch their own business at some point, but they're growing with you. So I think if you take anything from this, the idea of culture is to meet people where they are, help them grow, and understand that you don't experience life from the same perspective that they do. So take time to figure out what that is and what makes them tick and what makes them happy and what makes them want to work for you, like I said, and just really get to know that person and then have actionable steps. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's your role in that. And give them feedback often. Don't wait till you do it once a year like we've experienced in corporate America. I know things have changed a little bit. Maybe quarterly now is the way that they do it. But honestly, you want to give them constant feedback and constant recognition and let them know when they're doing a really good job. Often we let people know when they're doing a bad job. Well, do you want to be approached with knowing that you did something wrong? No, you want to know what you're doing right. And then you can talk about, okay, this isn't aligned with what we were trying to do. There's a gap there in whatever it is that we were trying to accomplish. Talk about that. Be straightforward with them. Help them grow. Be honest with them. Again, we're all people. And when you treat people like people, we tend to work a lot better together. But when you treat people as not widgets, but you're not treating people as humans, you're not going to grow, you're not going to scale, and you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. You might hit some good key performance indicators at some point, but then they're going to move on because they don't feel like they're respected by you and that you appreciate where you are today because of their help.
Firmly agree with you. I think that's something that a lot of leaders, especially from corporate, bring into their personal businesses is that mentality of like, you're still just a number or you're still just an employee, even when they hire, as you mentioned, an assistant, a virtual assistant or someone like that. So very great point. Well, that segues perfectly into the mindset of growth, right? So, what mindset shifts do you believe are essential for women um, who want to scale their business at this point?
The biggest mindset shift that we need to have, and I think it's true for women entrepreneurs, but also just women in general, and that's to realize that we can do anything that we want. We just have to believe in ourselves. And if we don't believe in ourselves first, no matter how much other people believe in us, we're not going to be able to achieve those goals. We have to look inward and say, I am enough and I can achieve these things. And I have the education, I have the experience, I have the whatever, fill in the blank, that makes me the right person at the right moment to be able to do this thing. And there's also another thing that entrepreneurs tend to have more of that the general population doesn't. And that's that I'm just going to keep moving forward and I'm going to keep doing the things and I'm not going to let anything hold me back. And I think the reason that entrepreneurs are more successful at that, and that's existing entrepreneurs that are, already in that growth stage. We're learning it as we're coming up. But I think that what they have is they've been telling themselves such positive things over time. And while I'm not an expert in like neuroplasticity or how the brain is wired, I do know that the more positive things that we say to ourselves, the more we begin to believe it. So if we go back to the conversation about the imposter syndrome and we had the negative self-talk that we have, the more that that happens, the more it's going to hold us back because that's what our brain believes. If we start to have the positive self-talk and say, I can do this. I am worthy. I can achieve these goals. I'm going to be the biggest entrepreneur there ever was. I mean, the more that you tell yourself positive things, the more likely you are to be able to hit that goal and to be successful and find ways to make your business a success, even if the traditional ways don't work. And I think that's my biggest secret, if you will, about mindset is to change how you speak to yourself. And once you change how you speak to yourself, a lot of things start to fall into place.
I agree with that so much. I always call it do the research. If your mind tells you you can't, please do the research. Can you really do it or can't you do it? And most times you'll find, especially with leaders, that in your resume, it shows so many examples that you actually have already done it. And you can certainly keep doing it. Well, this was such a great conversation with you. How can your audience find more resources and connect with you directly?
Well, you can follow me on this. Follow me follow me on YouTube. Click follow and click like and stay connected and see what's next so that you can always see what's coming up. We are starting our second season of Next Level Leadership, and it's going to be a little bit of a new focus. We're not going to talk a lot about aging in this next season. We are going to talk about entrepreneurs. And not only am I going to have great guests on, I'm also going to be talking solo and giving you some of my tips and tools and helping you to grow. And a lot of it might be around mindset and communication and just being a leader in your field and dominating your industry. So that's what we're going to be doing. You can find me at weaversolutionsllc.com. I'll put more information down in the show notes and also how you can follow me on other social media.
Well, I know everyone is certainly looking forward to season 2. I know I am. And to hear that you're going to talk a little bit more solo, that is exciting. Well, thank you again for not being afraid of your own hot seat. And I turn the program back over to you.
Well, thank you, Dani. It's been such an honor to have you with me today. And I just want to tell the audience a little bit why you're here because it's kind of not a fluke necessarily, but it's just something that kind of happened on spur of the moment. Dani took my leadership and influence quiz. And because she has such a vast experience in leadership training, and I mean, her experience is I'm fangirling on her. She just has such a great experience and she's done so many things and she's led so many groups and made such an impact um in her own business and her own world that as we were talking, she said, I've watched your YouTube channel and I like what you've done, but I don't know anything about you. Well, that's a great question to ask. That was a great thing to say. And so then she said, can I interview you? And I thought, why not? Because I enjoy talking with Dani and um, she just is a light for people. And so it's fun to connect with her. Dani, tell us a little bit about your path, your history and what brought you to where you are today.
Okay. Wasn't expecting to get in your hot seat, but I should have expected it very much like Oprah. Well,
That's an honor.
Um, I will tell you that I began in uh, healthcare sciences, kind of like you. I was a former prostate cancer researcher. From there, I went into luxury retail with management for Chanel and Gucci. And from there, I went into higher education and became a program manager for the MBA programs, also adjunct professor in business and professional communications for Florida International University. I am not going to go through all my roles. I encourage everyone to look me up. Just type my name in Google, Dani Bolden, and it will come up. But ultimately, the through line has always been communication. And my master's is in global strategic communications. So now what I do is help everyone understand how to have effective communication. And that could be verbal, nonverbal, or just communal communication. It can be cultural communication or interpersonal communication. So any form of communication, I'm assisting businesses and individuals to just be better communicators.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if you could give us one tip to be better communicators, what would that be?
I definitely think you touched on it earlier. It's about active listening. Either we're having a conversation or you're having a monologue. And I'm happy to attend either one. But if we're having a conversation, which means there are two of us having an exchange, then we have to rest at some point and listen, and actively listen, and not just hearing.
Yes. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm glad that we align on that, but I kind of figured we might align
No,
on
it's no.
that. So do you also see some things that I see with entrepreneurs that we work with, that they often sit there and wait for their turn to speak and not really pay attention to what the other person's saying?
Definitely. And I think that's just a force of habit. You even see that on TV, on different programs that you may be watching that kind of promote that frame of mind in society. So I don't take it personally, and I would encourage everyone else not to take it personally. It doesn't mean that that person is mean. It just means that you may want to have a conversation and politely let them know, hey, or find another way to, make it clear that you're not having the opportunity to express everything you like to express. But I think you mentioned in your hot seat moment that we repeat back what someone has said to make sure that we heard them correctly. So that's a great way to make sure that we're actively listening.
Well, you were actively listening to my conversation, so thank you. That's one of the things that makes a good host. That's one of the things that makes a good host. So, okay, you have such a great, vast experience. What makes you tick? Like, what turns you on to serve entrepreneurs?
You mentioned it earlier. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping people see you're enough. You don't need to keep proving something to perhaps a group, an organization, your family, whatever the outward item may be, that you're enough. You are enough. And so that's what really makes me tick. In Accountability Hub LLC, a lot of people are in that group who are by themselves. They're already a solopreneur, so they don't have that cheering session. And our motto is, let's celebrate the process. So I'm going to step out of the way so you can kind of see the logo, which lets you know I like being the light. You mentioned it, and that's kind of my logo.
That's awesome. That's your personal brand, and it shows through. It really shows through. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we jump off?
I had so much fun being here. I am really, really looking forward to season 2. I know you're going to have some great conversations, some great information to share with us, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Well, thank you. I had such a great conversation with you too. I really did. I had a great conversation, and I'm really glad that you're part of it and you're helping me launch season 2. And I hope someday to truly get you in the hot seat in the future so that we can learn more about you and the wonderful waves that you're making in your community and what you do. It has been an honor, Danny, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how to connect with you if they want to.
Absolutely. So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn tag is Miss Bolden. So once you put in all the LinkedIn.com / all of that, it's Miss Bolden. And then if you want to visit my website, it's www.accountabilityhubllc.com.
Perfect. We'll also put that in the notes so that everybody can access that as well. Well, Danny, thanks again. And until next time, thank you all for joining us on Next Level Leadership. We'll see you soon.